这样会让我
Okay, welcome back, everyone. So today we are basically, if you look at it, today is the last lecture. Tomorrow when we meet, we're not meeting tomorrow, but it's an online session tomorrow. So tomorrow what I'll do is I'll just wrap up. Wrap up meaning tomorrow during the online session, I'll just tell you what are the areas you need to focus for your exams. If you have any questions tomorrow, you can ask me anything you want, and I will try to address it as much as I can. Okay, I've given you some indications on how to tackle the assignment. Tomorrow I'll give you some ideas on how to tackle the exam. Basically, that's what I'll do tomorrow. So it'll be a short session tomorrow, not very long. If you have lots of questions to ask me, I'll be happy. I'll be spending a full 3 hours with you if you have lots of questions. If you don't have any questions, it's going to be maybe only 1 hour. Okay, it's not going to be very long, but I'm happy to get any questions that you may have. Anything which is not clear, you'd like me to elaborate tomorrow, please feel free to ask me questions, okay? So today, essentially today is the last lecture. I've covered all the topics. And if you look at what things to talk about in a short time. And a lot of these things, you can only experience it when you're there, when you're undertaking the change. So some of the things I may talk about today may be a little bit ambiguous. I'll try to give you examples, illustrate how I would go about doing it, but basically looking at whether the change that you want to achieve is being achieved or not. And how can we change an entity, an organization, even a person over the long term? That's what we are looking at. So it's about reviewing and keeping the change on track, like what the slides tell you to do. So let me pull out, let me stop this. Let me share my notes. So I have shared. Is someone at the door? No? Give me a minute. Let me close the door. Okay, I'm back. So the title of today's lesson is, it's about three topics, three very basic topics. One is revealing change. The other one is keeping change on track. And as we are reviewing whatever we implemented, is it working or not? And then we are trying to make sure that it is following according to plan. And lastly is sustaining the change. When you make a change, when you ask someone to change, you ask a company or a department to change, you don't want them to revert back to the old ways, the bad ways. Okay, that's what you don't want. Let me give you some illustrations an experience, not an experience I had. I was talking to this person. He was an American, but he was coming to Singapore to set up an operations, not set up, but he was taking over from someone. And I met him at a party and we were talking and he said, he came and then, the old guy had left. And then he said, the people that he took charge of, they've all reverted back to the old bad ways. I said, Morgan, now I have to start from scratch. And I said, what do you mean? I asked him to explain. And he said, well, the previous boss, the managing director of the company, it's a big company, I won't mention the name of the company. He said he was a slave driver. Do you know what's a slave driver? A slave driver is a person, hey, don't do it. You're going to get it from me. You're going to get fired. I'll give you a warning. You're not going to get a pay rise. That's a slave driver, driving slaves. And he said that's how the guy operated, another American. And when he left, people had no fear anymore. People lost the fear. And what do? They went back to the old ways. So he said, very difficult moment. What should I do? And I said, how much time do you have? He said, I might be here for 4 or 5 years. I said, okay, then start from scratch. You got to slowly, from bottom up, you have to make the change. The previous managing director was making the change from the top down. And when you put pressure from the top down, what happens? When you remove the pressure, you go back to the old ways. Just like your parents. Your parents tell you every day, hey, study, 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 study. When your parents are not there, what do? You think you're studying, but you're playing games. Right? But if you just leave your kids alone, I used to tell my wife, my daughters, when they were growing up, no tuition. I never asked them about their grades. I never checked their report. I just leave them as they are. Why? They have enough pressure in school. But they did well. Simply because I told them, it's okay. Whether you pass or fail, it's up to you. You want to study, you study. If you don't want to study, it's fine. At the end, you experience life, not me. That's how I put it. But now they have become very responsible people. You leave it up to them. You decide. But you got to involve them, explain to them the value of that change. Why are you changing? So these are things we think of, right? Of course, some students will always ask me, why do I have to study this? Why do I have to study that? Is this important? Will I be using it outside? Why do you think? What do you think? Why are you studying so many different things? Do you think you'll be using it outside? No. Well, why are you studying it then? Why? Most of you would not even use this. Well, why do you study? Huh?
I don't want to work suddenly after graduation.
Well, whether you work or not, eventually you have to pay the bills. Unless, of course, you're born with a silver spoon, yeah? But you're studying so many different things. Some of it you may apply. Some of it you may not even apply. But why do you study the things which you don't even apply? Anyone? Be able to adapt to the changing environment. This person, Pia Jindan, looks like a marketing person. How about the class over here? Why are you studying? You know, when I was a student, I studied things like, what do you call it? Measurement of controls, thermodynamics. I've never used it in my life, you know. But why did I study that? I sat there and I listened. It gives you a perspective of different things. When someone in a company or anywhere, they throw something at you, they say, hey, can you take care of this? You are given a new task, but you have learned to think to be able to handle anything new. I'm not afraid to tackle anything new because of the process that I went through. So when I teach you, This kind of things. I give you the theory and then I give you the practice. But that's how we learn. You must know the theory and then you apply it to practice. But that is true for almost everything you do in life. Even looking for a husband or a wife. You have to think through. You don't just fall in love because the person is good looking. Can the person sustain you? Can the person support you? Can the person take care of you? And likewise, the person is asking the same kind of things. So these are the things you think through, not because the person is good looking or the person is rich. You have to think through things, and that's what education teaches us. Okay? Same, anything we learn. And that's what we are doing here, reviewing change, making sure it is on track, whether you can sustain for the future. So let's look at reviewing change. Reviewing change. When we review change, there are three things we look for. Okay, first thing. The first thing we look for are interventions being implemented as intended. That means you have an idea. You have an idea, I want to do this. Let's look at it at a personal level. I want my daughters to be responsible. I have an idea. To make them responsible, what do I have to do? I have to make sure that they understand first and foremost the value of money. I will tell them, hey, get a cheap phone, 2-year subscription, $0. My daughter will say, Dad, I'm not you. I want an Apple iPhone. I said, that costs $1,000. Yes, but I am an Apple person. You are not. So what do? I said, okay, I'll get you a phone for $1,000. But every month I deduct from your allowance because my budget is $0. And I will deduct from their allowance every time. If they want something, and I say, this is my budget, and they want something more expensive, I deduct from their allowance. Even today, they're married, they understand the value of money. I spoke to the husband of my young daughter. He said, your daughter is very good. I said, why? Because every month she gives me a report. This is the income, this is the expenses, and she'll tell me, okay, you have to pay for this. She gives him a report every month. Expenses, income. This is how the household expenses are. And he said, and he's a tax consultant, and he said, this is wonderful. Your daughter is very responsible. I said, good. She has made the change. What I taught her earlier, the interventions are being implemented as intended. Same in a company. When you look at a company, when you make a change, you want to make sure that the interventions that you are implementing are working. All right? So you have to ask yourself, review the situation and identify those factors that have hindered implementation. So what are those factors which will stop you from implementing a change? Most of it are usually behavioral factors. Factors like, so examples, You can say lack of commitment and motivation. All right. From those affected by the intervention. So people who are going through the change, maybe they're just not motivated. Say, so difficult. Every time you come across a difficult subject, what happens to you? So difficult. I don't feel like studying this. There's no motivation. Right? Happens to all of us. Same thing in a company. I want to intervene. I want to change. And those people are affected. I don't want to do this. I prefer to do things as I had done before. Why must we change? People will always tell you that. You've got to convince them. Sometimes, and I think this is worse, people at the top don't support you. If I want to make a change in the house and my wife doesn't support me, do you think it would be fun? No fun. You need support also from the top. So you need things like lack of political support is important. Right? You have to make sure that the people who are at the same level as you are, you're trying to make a change, they must give you support. I noticed that in some of the companies I've worked for, when things don't go well, I may want to institute some change, but if it doesn't go well, it's mostly because of the people who are at the same level as I am not giving me the support. Worse, my boss doesn't give me the support. All right? Maybe he doesn't want to change either. He's happy where he is. And these things can happen. I've seen it a few times. There was one time in this workshop, it's a small problem. The mechanics were all complaining to me, how come our parts are always late? We order the parts and it's always late. And I said, I'll investigate. So I tracked when they placed the purchase order, what happens after that. So I did a flow map. And I know exactly after I finished the flow map where the problem was. The problem was at the secretary's level. When the secretary receives all these purchase orders, instead of getting it signed and approved as quickly as possible, it was just piling on an in tray. I told the boss, I said, we have to train the secretary. You know what the boss told me? He said, Morgan, just leave it as it is. And later on, when I quit the company, I stayed in that company only for a short time. When I quit the company, I know why he said that. The secretary was his girlfriend. Things did not move. These things can happen. All right? I realized why there was a problem. Conflict of interest. So this kind of things can happen. Don't get upset by that. You move on. You go and do bigger and better things. All right? You don't need to get upset. Lack of political support. Some things, the last one, a lot of people say this, but I think you can get this. Insufficient resources. Resources can be obtained. You tell people, how you present it. When you present it in an appropriate way, you can get resources. But the problem would be things like time, right? Time is also a resource. Money, I don't think is a problem. People, I think if you pay them, you can get them to come. But time, for me, is usually the resource where you cannot expand. It is fixed. So apart from time, I think all the other resources, I think, can be managed. All right? I'm teaching UCD program and undergraduate program after your course is finished, project management in the supply chain. And one of the things we always talk about is how do we manage resources? And I always tell them, when it comes to time, you have to manage it well. And that's when we draw things like critical path methods. I do not know whether you've learned that. So I teach them those things. But anyway, this is some of the examples of factors which might impact the intervention. So this is one. So let's look at two. Two is interventions producing the desired effect. One of the things you should always look out for when you intervene is cause and effect. This is where reading a lot becomes important. For example, if you look at incentives, if you increase the incentive, which is a cost, do you think motivation will increase? If I increase incentive, do you think motivation will increase? Short term, not long term. In the short term, it will increase. And short term meaning maybe 2-3 months. After that, it will drop back to normal. Do not think when I give you a higher salary, you will be performing at a higher level all the time. You don't. To operate at the higher level, you must be intrinsically motivated, not extrinsically motivated. Intrinsically motivated involves identifying the right kind of people for the job. Someone who is looking for challenge, someone who wants to learn new things. Those are all intrinsic motivation. But if you're looking for just a high salary or benefits, you are being motivated by extrinsic factors. Okay, and extrinsic factors will only motivate you in the short term. Understand? All right. Problems, ladies? You want to move? Very hot. Okay, ladies want to move here. People on the online, let them move, and then we shall continue. Yeah, please move. Okay, so the first question is, while intervention might have been implemented as intended, it might not be producing the effect that was anticipated. It may be the aircon is off. Give me a minute, yeah? That's nothing. I think there's nothing. Just give me a minute. Just give me a minute, yeah, online audience. I'll get someone to listen. Hi, this is 606. The students are complaining and machine is not good. Okay, come down and have a look. Thank you. And back. All right, so when we implement something, the interventions may be being done the right way, but you're not getting the desired effect. Now, when you don't get the desired effect, so what you need to do is you have to start looking at what we call the cause and effect hypothesis. You always have to look for the cause and effect. Anything you do, if you look at the economy, if the economy is tanking, if the economy is stagnating, it's going down, what would the government do to increase the economy, to increase economic growth? What would they do?
Increase tax.
Yeah, but you can decrease tax, you can, but what are the most common things they would do?
Maybe just some good ways. Yeah, they can earn some money from our countries, from others.
Okay, I'll just write it down over here. Okay, but I would not put it in your final notes, just to explain what cause and effect hypothesis I'm doing this. When you look at economic growth, this is where theory becomes important. Economic growth, GDP, equals to consumption, private investment, government expenditure, net export, X minus M. I'm just using this example to illustrate. So you have to look which portion creates economic growth. I think most of you are from China. So those from China, which portion, consumption, investment, government expenditure, or net exports causes economic growth in China? Which one? In China, G is very big. Government invests in infrastructure, invests in building roads, bridges. So if the government feels that maybe consumption is low, investment is high, economy is not growing, government will increase expenditure. Understand? Same in Singapore. G is quite big. So the government will monitor how the economy is doing. So government expenditure is big, increase it to grow the economy. In the US, which one is big? The US, which one is big?
Personal.
Yes, consumption. Consumption is big. In the US, 80% of GDP growth is from consumption. People spend. So if you can find something to help people spend. So if you look at the US economy, inflation is going up, which is a different story, but inflation is going up because economy is booming. And why is economy booming? Because during the pandemic, what happened was the government gave people money to spend. That's what they are doing. Clear? So giving money to spend, I think each citizen got what, $2,000 or something like that, which is a lot of money to spend. So all of a sudden in the US, consumption went up. And because the consumption went up, inflation went up. All right? And because inflation went up, central government wants to increase interest rate to cool down the economy, to get rid of inflation. So here what I'm explaining is I'm looking at causes. So all these are causes. This is the effect. This is the cause, or causes in this. So you look at the causes and you address the causes. The same thing in companies. If I increase incentives, will it increase motivation? Yes, but in the short term. So we have to start thinking carefully what you want to change. If you want to change motivation, is incentives alone enough? There may be other things that you have to do. Maybe in the short term, it may be important, but in the long term, it is insufficient. Okay, everyone clear about that? Okay, I'll just remove this here. This is more economics. I just wanted to illustrate what is cause and effect hypothesis. So what companies, what they do is they use things like the balance scorecard. Okay, the balance scorecard, in short, they call it BSC. And the balance scorecard, what it does is it looks at the finance of the company, it looks at the processes in the company, and it looks at the customer base. It also looks at, what have I missed? The human resources part of it. And it tries to make sure that everything is balanced to deliver whatever is desired. If one of it is out of whack, not balanced, then it causes problems in the company. So people usually look at the balance scorecard. It is a tool we can use to see how marketing is doing, how HR is doing, how operations is doing, and how finance is doing. 4 functional areas. And who came up with a balanced scorecard? Anyone knows? Who came up with a balanced scorecard? Give me a name. Come on, ladies and gents. Kaplan. Mr. Kaplan. That's how he made his money. You have all this because of Mr. Kaplan. In the US, Mr. Kaplan, well, 2 people, Norton and Kaplan, but I do not know what happened to Norton. They came out with a balanced scorecard. In the US, they made money from the balanced scorecard. In Singapore, Hong Kong, other places, I do not know why they don't teach the balanced scorecard in Kaplan. But in the US, if you want to go to Kaplan, you're going there to learn about the balanced scorecard. And that's how he made his money. Okay, advising companies. Companies will send people to Kaplan to study about the balanced scorecard. But our focus here is not so much on the balanced scorecard. Just remember, it is a tool we can use to evaluate the 4 functional areas in the company: marketing, HR, operations, and finance. Okay, right? They call it by different names, but it doesn't matter. So the balanced scorecard, okay, outlines objectives, measures, targets, which can point to the need for change. Okay, something you can look at. Right, so this is the second thing we need to think of when we think of reviewing change. We look at the implementation, we look at whether the implementation have the desired effect. But let's say you look at the cause and effect, everything seems to be working, but let's say, for example, okay, let's say we use the economic growth as an example again. Let's say economy is tanking, it's not doing well. And government says, okay, I'm going to reduce interest rate so that investors can borrow money at very low rates. China did that too, yeah? Reduce the interest rate so that investors can borrow money at very low interest rate, and they will invest in their factories. And then when the time comes, all this has got a time lag. That means I borrow money, I implement, it might take about 1-2 years to see the effect, correct? and you don't see any effect. What happens then?
Oh,
The question we should ask is the change plan still valid? So I give you that example. By lower interest rate, you borrow money, and the government thinking is they will invest in their factories, and you don't see any effect. What is happening? And we saw this in the US a few years back. Do you know what all these investors did? They borrow money, they invest in the stock exchange. That's why the stock exchange went up. Not invest in the business, but invest in the stock exchange. And that's why stock markets went very higher. So you want to make a change, but you may have unintended consequences. So life is not that simple, yeah, for a change manager. You have to think about a lot of things. All right? You have to observe. So the interventions may have a small desired effect, but there is little or no impact on overall organizational performance. This can happen. Okay, this can happen. All right? For example, Japan, a good example, yeah? Japan, anytime the economy is not doing well, the government will come up with a stimulus package, huge stimulus package. But where do all these stimulus packages go? To the politicians who have influence, maybe they are townships or maybe they are, their prefecture. They'll get the money and then maybe they will build new roads, new bridges, but it has got no effect on the overall economy. That's the problem in Japan. Okay? So these things can happen. Do not think it only happens in Japan. Sometimes I fear it can happen in China too. It is a possibility. All right? So we have to make sure that you make a change which benefits the organization. You have to go and see how the change is being achieved. That's what I mean. No impact. And you want to make sure that as anything change. So you have to check the validity of the hypothesized cause and effect relationships. You have to look at cause and effect again. But now you have to ask yourself, is it still valid? Remember, we spoke about incentive and performance, individual performance. Maybe you increase incentive, performance increases in the short term, but long term it goes down. Then you have to ask yourself, okay, I want people to perform at a higher level at the peak. So if that is the case, then you have to ask yourself, should we then, instead of looking at incentives, should we look at our hiring practices? What kind of people we want to hire? What kind of mindset they have to do? The multinational corporations, I work for 2 multinational corporations. Well, you can say 3, but the third one is more, they call me, I didn't call them. But the first 2 multinational corporations I worked for, they put me through a psychographic test. You know what's a psychographic test? They try to understand how I think. So the first multinational corporation I worked for, there were 300 people applying for the job, but all of them were called. And we met in the hotel. In this hotel, what they said was, okay, everyone go to the ballroom. And in the ballroom, they had all these chairs and they gave us a psychographic test. We have to take a test. They ask you questions, stupid questions, what do you like, what do you do, all these things. You think it has got no meaning. But at the end, out of 300, they selected, I think about 30. I was one of them. And this 30, they told us, you come back in the afternoon. So when we went back in the afternoon, what did they give us? They gave us a practical test. And then during the practical test, I made a mistake. And the guy who was looking at me, he was a French guy, I still remember his name. Okay, he looked at me, he said, is anything wrong? He didn't tell me whether I made a mistake or not. He looked at me and he said, is anything wrong? And I told him, yes, I think I made a mistake. He said, good. He said, at least you admit you make a mistake. And out of these 30, you know how many they selected? 3. I was one of them. So they're looking at your explanation. They're looking at how you think. So we have to check. What they're doing is checking the hypothesized cause and effect. Whether this cause is the effect that you want to get. Right? So there are companies who do that. All right? A lot of companies do that right now. They put you through a psychographic test. So I've attended 2 psychographic tests. The second psychographic test was kind of funny. I was employed, and then my boss calls me in and he said, let me explain to you what the psychographic test told you. And they explained to me. All right? So check the validity of the hypothesized cause and effect relationships. Examples of this. Examples of factors that can affect or impact these relationships are value propositions of customers. What do customers value? Have you heard of the perfume called 4711? Have you heard of the perfume called 4711? No? Some of you, yes. Some of you, no. During my mom's time, when my mom was a young lady, I was a little kid. If you wear 4711, 很好. Good. If you don't wear 4711, you're no good. So my mom had a bottle of 4711. I forgot all about it. Until recently, before the pandemic, I was in Germany. And I went to, what was this here? Not Hanover. Cologne. No, was it? Yeah, Cologne. I was in Cologne. Cologne, yeah, no perfume. I was in Cologne and I was looking at this building and it had a big number, 4711. I said, hey, 4711, my mom used to have that. And then I went there and I said, why is it you have 4711? What is 4711? And they told me the history. And now you can buy samples of these 4711 perfume bottles. And it costs a bomb. I wanted to buy for my wife. I said, my God, so expensive. I'm not going to buy this. But 4711, the history is, it is the house number when Napoleon conquered the Germanic tribes. Napoleon is a guy who united Germany. Yeah? Before that, there were all these tribes. And this house, the number is 4711. They made this cologne. That's the history behind it. But now you don't see it anywhere, except maybe in Cologne. But people go there to buy this as a sample. But you don't use it. Why? What do you use? What do you all use? When my wife was young, she used Chanel. What do you all use? I think Chanel is not so famous now. What do you guys in the online session use? Changes, right? I do not know what you use. But this is what I mean by value proposition of customers. Customers' value proposition changes. And when those things change, that can affect your cause and effect. Understand? So you have to be careful. You have to monitor your customers' value proposition. What are you proposing to them? So you see companies going up and going down. For 7-Eleven, they have stopped promoting their product worldwide, but they have it still in Cologne simply because now it has become, what do you call it? Something, a collector's market. You go there, you buy it, so they focus on it, but the price is so high. All right, so you have to change. Companies, you change. Look at Barbie dolls. Who buys Barbie dolls? Hey, Barbie is older than I am, you know. Who buys Barbie dolls? Do you all buy Barbie dolls? No. But when my daughters were growing up, that's all they bought. They want Barbie dolls. Now I do not know who buys Barbie dolls. So these are all changing value proposition, which will change your cause and effect. That's the examples I'm trying to give you. All right. Then you have developments in the external environment. Changes in the external environment will also impact you. And these are the changes which you may not be observant of, but it is there. Things will change. Let me ask you this question. Okay, maybe you look at the 20th century, maybe the US economy was the largest. You look at the 19th century, which economy was the largest?
Which century?
19th. The British Empire. If you look at the 18th century, which economy was the largest? Spanish. If you look at the 17th century, which economy was the largest? Huh? The Dutch were quite innovative. So it changes. The economy changes. The environment changes. Because the environment changes, economies change, companies change, people change. We forget. Okay, do not think, everything you're doing now will always be the same as what you'll be doing 10 years, 15 years from now. I have changed a lot. From what I studied to what I'm doing right now, I have changed a lot. A lot of the things that I do. I'm fortunate enough to see technology, how it impacts our lives, how it impacts work. But if you don't keep up to date on the changes in the environment, you may lose out. And countries lose out. Right? How did Singapore become rich? How did Singapore become rich? What? Trade. Singapore became rich because of trade. It made a lot of money during the Vietnam War, The US were coming here for repairs, for refurbishments. This is where they came to do their work. And then during the early days, a lot of trade passed through the Straits of Malacca. But now Singapore is slowly losing out on trade. I do not know about the future of Singapore. I'm a Singaporean. I'm sharing my misgivings because I don't think our politicians are doing the right thing. I'm not sure, I'm not so confident about the future of Singapore because there are a lot of countries in this region where the ports are getting better. They're becoming more efficient. They're becoming better in many different ways. We seem to be focusing more on services, tourism, banking, finance, those kind of things. Well, those kind of things can support the economy, but they are not the economy. To grow an economy, what do you need? You need manufacturing. Singapore, our problem is we do not have space. That is our challenge. Okay? But I was hoping that our leaders will tie up with economies in the region and build things there. But we have not done so. All right, so what do? I do it myself. I go and do things outside, not in Singapore. I don't have any work in Singapore except teach. That's the only thing I do in Singapore. But I think I can give a lot of value to manufacturing companies. Okay? Any questions on this? Anyone? Anyone has got any questions? No? How about online? Anyone has any questions? I should not forget the online audience. Wu Heng, Kiao Jin Dan, Yu Yining. Anyone has any questions? Nope. Son Hao Bo has got no questions. Piao, so far, so good. Okay, let's go to the next stage. So we have, I said, to review change. All right, we have to, we have to look at these three things. 1, 2, 3. Now let's look at keeping change on track. Remember, I gave you the 3-step process steps of change last week. Remember Lewin? Lewin's change process. I spoke about this. The first is unfreezing and creating a readiness to change. The second is moving to a new state. And the third is refreezing the behavior at this new level for as long as it is beneficial to do so. Okay, so these are the 3 steps. And I think the example I gave was, I think I spoke about my daughter smoking, right? I gave you that example. So to unfreeze, to get her to change, was it my daughter? No, I said somebody working. Yeah, my daughter was also smoking, but I did another thing with her. Okay, maybe I'll share that with you. The employee I've already explained. So my daughter, when she was very young, when she was about 13 years old, I caught her smoking. What do you mean, how come? She was walking in the street and I caught her smoking. Yeah, where do kids like to hang out when they are in Singapore? They like to hang out in Orchard Road. All right? So when I was walking, she was coming in front of me and she was smoking. So when she was smoking, I saw her. I said, hey, I never got upset. I saw her smoking away, but she didn't know how to smoke. She was just blowing smoke. She was, that's all she was doing. But then when I saw her, I waved at her. When she saw me, what did she do? She dropped the cigarette. And then when she walked towards me, I said, you have dropped your cigarette. I never got upset with her. So she was shocked with my behavior. Why I didn't scold her. So what am I doing? Unfreezing her, creating a readiness to change. I never said, why are you smoking? You shouldn't be smoking. Go back home. I didn't say that. I said, I didn't know you smoked. I said, why did you drop the cigarette? Do you have any more cigarettes? I want to smoke too. She was shocked. All right. When I took that approach, she was shocked. But all I'm doing is just following Lewins's change process. I am confusing her, unfreezing, create a readiness to change. And I said, I didn't know you smoke. Say, yeah, I used to. Well, why do you smoke? Cannot answer. Because friends smoke. Oh, my friends all smoke. Okay, can I smoke with your friends? And she said, Dad, that's not cool. Okay, why can't I smoke? You can smoke. It's a question. So slowly I'm moving her to a state. Anyone can smoke. But is it right to smoke? And then I started explaining to her why I didn't smoke. And I think I told you about that factory I worked in. So I kind of explained that to her. So she listened. And then I said, why did you try other ways? Maybe drink tea. Okay. Maybe have a chewing gum. And that's what she's doing right now. So these are the things. You follow the steps. But when you want to change anyone, you can do this. Unfreeze means you got to change the way of thinking, the mindset. That's unfreezing. When you start, I wouldn't say confused. Confused is not a good word, yeah? You are trying to give them new perspective. You're trying to change their perspective. This is what I mean by changing the mindset, unfreezing. But when you start changing people's perspective, they can be ready for some new perspective. And then you make the move. The second one, moving to a new state. And once you move to a new state, now you have to reaffirm that this behavior is good. So afterwards, whenever I met my daughter, I will just say, oh, you smell good. You don't smell of smoke anymore. I say things like that. I said, your cheeks are rosy, looks very good. So once in a while, you say things like this. You reaffirm the behavior. Okay? But same in a company. People will behave in a way as long as it is beneficial. If something else comes up, they may revert back to something else. Okay, so if you are running a company, you need to be observant of all this. All right? This is what Lewin says. So what we need to think about is we have to base on this. Change is often short-lived. All right? Change is often short-lived. People change for a small reason. For example, for me, somebody told me meditation is good. Right? I do not know whether you all meditate. Okay, she does it. But anyway, I tried. I said I tried. I did it maybe early this year. So wake up in the morning, I'll sit, close my eyes and meditate. I lasted about 3 weeks because something is always happening. Sometimes I feel I got to rush off. I got to do things. All right. So I have not stuck with meditation. I wish I could do it more often, but I have no one to do it with. No one encourages me. My wife is away at work. I'm alone at home. So there's no support. Sometimes you need people to kind of encourage you. All right. So for me, meditation is a failure. I have not done it. I'm a failure at meditation. I wish someone can advise me or teach me. But I was telling my wife, I said, look, I'm thinking of, maybe next year or the year after next, maybe I'll move to Bali. And I say, when I go to Bali, I'm going to get a yoga instructor. And I hope she can teach me how to meditate, to do yoga. She said, okay, all the power to you. So maybe belong to a group of like-minded individuals to make you change. So we have to think about that. This is what I mean by refreezing the behavior at a new level. I like someone to teach me. So change is often short-lived. So what we have to do is we have to remember there are many, or there may be circumstances where it may not be beneficial to continue to maintain change. And we give up quite easily, like I did. All right? And this happens in many companies, right? So maybe what I can do is, okay, that's the next topic, keeping change on track. I'll give you the question and I will answer the question maybe after the break. Okay? So let me give you the question. Let's go to the next stage. What do we have to do to consolidate change and hold on to gains? So this is a question I will answer after the break. Okay, everyone? How about people online? Anyone has any questions before we take a break? Any questions, anyone? San Haubo? Anyone has any questions you would like to ask me? How about the face-to-face class? Anyone, any questions? All clear, Zhangqi is all clear. How about here? Any questions? No questions? Okay, we'll take a break here. It's almost, well, here's slow here. I'm using my computer clock here. Right, so let's say we come back at, not this clock, yeah, right? Computer clock, my computer clock says 4:17, which is almost 4:20. So can we come back at 4:40? Is that okay? 4:40, okay, everyone? Right, we come back at 4:40, yeah? And then we'll continue with this question. Okay, I'm going to switch off the mic and I'll see you all a little bit later, right? Hello, everyone. Can we start right now? Both online and face to face. Everyone online. Are you all back? Jay Fei, Sun Hao Bo, Zhang Ji, all back. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let us continue where we left off. And I said what I was talking about is how do we keep change on track? I kind of quoted what Levin said, the three-step change. So now what we are trying to do is we are trying to make sure that, once we have moved to a new state, how do we keep it there? All right, that's what we are trying to do. And to answer that question, okay, what do we have to do to consolidate the change and hold on to gains? How do we keep it at that high level? So there are a few things we need to consider. First thing, the way the whole change process is managed from the beginning. When do you think, let's say, if someone asks you to change, if someone tells you to change, what kind of approach would you prefer?
I think it depends. It depends on different situations. Maybe I will put myself into.
Yeah, but what kind of approach would you like? If you want to change, if someone comes to you and says, hey, look, come on, you have to change. What kind of approach do you like? The same is true in companies, Do not think how we behave in companies is not how we behave at home. It's the same. We bring our childhood things into the workplace. You watch children play in the playground, I can predict how they would behave in the company maybe 10 years, 15 years from now. So what kind of approach do you like? That's the question. Okay, so Piao Jindan is saying, prefer a subtle way to change. How, Jindan? Okay, so Jindan is saying he needs to be persuaded. He needs to be maybe sit with him and discuss. Okay, now Chong Liu says a formal document, maybe outlining to you, hey, this is what you need to do. All right? Now, the theory says if I take a top-down approach, telling you what to do, this is what you have to do. I gave you that example. When I remove the pressure, you will revert back to your old ways. So the change process, an effective change process, needs a lot of discussion, needs a lot of negotiation, needs a lot of persuasion, like what Piao Jindan has mentioned. Telling someone what to do can have an effect in the short term, but in the long term, people will go back to the old ways. That's a fact. Clear? And you can look at kids, if you tell kids, hey, don't do that, don't smoke, don't do this. When the parents are not there, they will do it. But if you kind of encourage them, if you say, look, it's not good for you, but you want to try, shall we try it together and see what happens? Right? For me, is when I was raising my kids, I used to tell my wife, I said, leave them alone, let them play. Our job is to make sure that they don't get hurt. We observe. We shouldn't be telling them what to do all the time. Okay? If it's a top-down approach, once you lift the pressure, things will go back to the old ways. So how you manage the process itself, right? So usually tough, top-down, strategies. Okay. Strategies are more likely to foster compliance. People will follow out of fear. People are afraid. I'm afraid for my job. I'm afraid for this. I'm afraid for that. I want to support my family. People will do it. But this compliance disappears when the pressure to maintain the change is eased. Let me give you an example, yeah? Maybe I'll share this with you, all right? When I was I lived in the UK. I lived in the UK for about 5 years. I was studying there, was working there. When I was working there, studying there, I see students coming from countries, maybe religiously autocratic, let's say from Iran, or countries where you have a communist regime. When they go to the UK, I do not know how many of you have lived in the UK. The UK is one of the freest societies I've ever been in, much freer than the US. You can say anything, you can do anything you want. No one would bother you. Okay? Now, those students who come from those autocratic countries, when they go to the UK, they will experiment with all sorts of things. And do you know what is the only pressure which keeps them together? It's not society, you know. It's the people they come with. Let's say they come in a group. That peer pressure will control them. But if they come alone, a lot of them just go haywire, start doing all sorts of things, and it always ceases to amaze me. This is why I don't like top-down approaches. I prefer more bottom-up approach. When you, like what Pierre Jindan said, you need to persuade people. You need people to explore, find out for themselves. All right? So do not think telling people what to do all the time, you will achieve the end result. It is not easy, right? But when you try to explain things to people, over time they learn, they find out, okay? Then they might change. Let me share a saying with you. Freedom is a great responsibility, but most people do not understand what freedom is. When you're free to do anything, are you responsible to yourself to learn what is the best thing to do? All right? And usually if you find someone who is very responsible, I've met very responsible people in very free societies. I've also met very irresponsible people in free societies. They don't understand that freedom is a responsibility. But if you go to a country or an organization where it is pushed down from the top, people don't understand that responsibility. What is it to be free? Okay, I learned freedom when I was in the UK, not in Singapore. And it gives you a lot of responsibility, what you should be doing to your fellow countrymen, your fellow citizens, even teaching. You are here. You are paying a lot of money to come here to learn. It is my responsibility to give you more than what is in the notes or in the slides, because that's what you are here in the classroom or in the class. If I want to take the easy way out, I can just read from the slides, you know. I have made that decision if I want to do that, but that's not exercising freedom in a responsible way. We have to decide what is right. And that is difficult. It's not easy to decide what is right from wrong. Most of us, when we think it's freedom, we'll just do whatever is for our own needs. But you have to think about others. right? Like even when we talk about wearing a mask, during COVID, there was a lot of cases, in the US, people refused to wear masks. They said, it's a free country, why should I wear a mask? My friend, he's an American, he said he had to talk to some of his friends. He said, look, it's not about you. Are you responsible for the people around you? That's what freedom is. We have to realize that. When you start thinking about others, you want to change them, you want to improve them, then you are a responsible person. Okay? So remember that, yeah? With freedom comes a lot of responsibility. So when you have a top-down approach, okay, when you have a top-down approach like what I said here, when you remove that pressure, people may not understand what is the freedom to decide for yourself. Okay, that means somebody else is deciding for you. Okay? All right. Well, Bauchi is saying something. Freedom is not indulgence. That is correct. Okay? So, once you have this, okay, let's look at number 2. You also, as a change manager, how change managers act to keep change on track is important, especially after initial change goals have been achieved. Okay, so let's look at this. What do I mean by change managers? How do they act? What they should do. Now, as a change manager, as a leader, a change manager is a leader. You have to ask, how do people view the change? Not everyone would say change is good. Some people may dislike it. Some people may hate it. Some people may love it. Not everyone loves change. So, first question you have to ask is, how is the change perceived? I mean, you coming to Singapore to study, I think all of you are foreign students. Maybe for you, that change is great. It's wonderful. It's a nice feeling. But some of the changes, I was reading something, was it last night or maybe over the weekend? I was reading I think it was one of the sites I go to. Somebody says, what is a life-changing experience for you? I think someone wrote in and this person was replying. And she was, I think, a senior person in a company. She said a life-changing experience. We're talking about change, yeah? She said when her husband died. Initially, it might be very painful. It may be something which may shock you, shock your system. But for this lady, I admire her. She said, for me, that was a life-changing experience because my husband used to take care of me when he died. He died in a car accident. I have to rethink about my life. Should I continue? Should I work? Because she said she had kids. She's got to take care of the kids. You're responsible for these kids. And she decided to study part-time, took a part-time job, but then she rose up in the company. So for her, it has been thrust upon her. For others, the change can come from outside without you even thinking about it. Other times, people will tell you to change, like your parents. Parents have a habit of telling you, you must do this, you must do that, you must go and study. Maybe your friends, your spouse. Change will come in many different forms. Do not think it is always a company. Even companies will change when one company buys another company over. It may not always be a change from within. Kaplan may change. You never know. UCD may change. You never know. You will change. Now you might think, I will never change. But something would happen which will make you change. And we need to be aware of it. How do you perceive it? Right? One of my worst experiences here with change here was a long time ago, not recently, long time ago, when I was in my late 20s. I dated a girl and I thought I would marry that girl. Okay? And then she broke off all of a sudden. And I've never seen her since then. Right? For me, that was painful. I felt betrayed. But because of that, all I did was I just focused on my job. And because I focused on the job, I just climbed the organizational ladder. Until I reached the top, I got bored. I decided to leave the company and set up my own company. If not for that incident, I think I would still be working in that company, maybe in middle management, hoping to get married, get a job, have kids. That's what would have happened. But because I broke up with her, it made me strive. I said, I got to just put all my effort in work. And I went up. So all these things can happen. Then when I went up, and then my company sent me to a foreign country, to take care of its operations. And that's how I met my wife. Anything can happen. Okay, so that's how you should be looking at change. It will always lead to something different. Is it better? I'm not so sure. But is it different? Yes, it would be. So how is a change perceived? How do you perceive the change? That's important. It can be peripheral, or central to performance. Can be organizational performance, can be individual performance. What is peripheral? Peripheral could be, like maybe smoothing out your rough edges. All right, like for example, let's say your English language is not that great, so you take on certain courses, so it kind of improved your periphery, how you present your case, how you make presentations, how you write. That is peripheral. But central could be something which will help you. There is a visible change. You make more money or you move up into positions of responsibility. That might be central. Like acquiring a skill. I mean, I meet people who are very good in their job. Maybe their English language is not that great, but they make lots of money. So the English language is a peripheral performance. It doesn't really impact them. So you can. Okay, so a change can be peripheral, maybe meaning at the edges, or it could be central. Same in organizations, same in individuals. All right? Is it perceived as acceptable or threatening to stakeholders? How do people look at the change? Do they look at it as it will affect my livelihood? Or okay, maybe I have to do something different. Some people are afraid to make a change because they think they will lose their job. Or maybe they have to report to somebody. I was one of those guys, when I was much younger. I was working for a small American company and we were bought over by a bigger company. And then all the senior managers was from this big company. So a lot of us left because we didn't see any future in that company. We left. So for us, that change was not acceptable. But there were others, I still keep in touch with them, who stayed on, who just did their work, followed whatever was told for them to do. They slowly grew in the company and they became, one of them became the engineering director of the company. He just retired recently. Okay, so for some, he will accept it. For me, I couldn't accept it. So again, like we say, for different people, It might be different perceptions, different ways of looking at things. Okay. So for the stakeholder, I was a stakeholder in the company I worked in when I was bought over. I didn't like it and I left. And this is what some companies would expect you to do. If you don't like it, leave. Right? Do not think people quit because they are looking for a better job. They may quit simply because they do not like the changes taking place. Usually that's the case most of the time. All right? So that is one. So as a change manager, change managers can influence the way change is perceived, and this will have consequences for keeping the change on track. Okay, so remember this. And another thing you can think of is how is the change implemented? When we look at the different forms of change, there was incremental change, there was transformational change, there was things like how much time do you have for change, target of change. Remember, there were so many, the contingency model we looked at. There's no one way. There's so many different ways. So you have to ask yourself which model, which method is the best. It may not be the best. Maybe best is too strong a word. Appropriate would be a better word. Which change method is appropriate? So how is a change implemented? We have to remember there is no one implementation process that will be effective in all settings. Right? Okay, let's go back to my daughters again. I want to make a change in them right now. When they were much younger, easier, right? Now they're adults. Now they have kids. Now, how do I make a change in them if I see something wrong? I talk to them as an adult, I don't talk to them as a kid. I talk to them as an adult. And that's the problem with mothers. Mothers will always treat you like a kid. That's the problem with my wife. I always tell her, they're not kids anymore. But mothers will always tell you, why you do this? Why you do that? They don't treat you like an adult. They still treat you like young daughters or sons. My mother, when she was alive, that's how she treated me. Okay, even when I was like 40 years old, when I go and see her, she'll treat me like a small kid. Right? But that's normal for mothers. But fathers will treat you like an adult. Okay, that's the thing, the differences I see. So the same thing. When we try to change, we have to remember there's no one way. It doesn't mean when you treat you as a kid, it worked, it will work right now. It may not work. All right? So how is a change implemented? And the last one is the timing, sequencing, and pacing of the change process. What do I mean by this? I mean, you are going through a change process. Hopefully, you are changing. You have attended a few classes. How long is your course? 2 years? 1 year?
1 year.
1 year? Okay, so you're doing it in 1 year. In 1 year, how many classes have you taken? How many subjects have you taken?
Is it 12?
12 subjects in 1 year. In 1 year, 12 subjects. Every month, one subject. Wow, that's a lot. Okay, but you are taking one subject every month. At the end of that period, you should have changed. We are talking about timing. We are talking about sequencing. We are talking about pacing. And the same is true in any organization. When you want to make a change, you have to not apply too much pressure, but enough pressure for the person to understand this is what you have to do. Too much pressure can stress people out. Too little pressure, maybe people might think, this is nothing. Just enough pressure, but sequencing, timing, pacing, that becomes important. Okay? We have to remember that. Change is a process. It's not a one-off thing. It's not that you finish managing of change, it's all done. But when you take whatever you have learned and then you start seeing outside, this is what I try to do with everything I read. I look at what's happened. Okay, maybe I can share this with you. Right now, I'm reading a book on the universe. It's about astrophysics. But I can tell you, half the time I do not know what is it all about. Because it's so deep and it's so difficult. I'm not an astrophysicist. But do you know what that book has done for me? Every night, I look at the book, they talk about the stars, I'll go out and have a look. And now I want to buy a telescope. I want to observe because this book is explaining all these things, how we learn, how the stars develop. I do not know anything about astrophysics, but whatever I read, I want to see how it is applied. And the same thing applies to managing of change, or for that matter, any subject that you study. You want to take it, you want to apply it. And that's how you make a change. Do not do it just to pass exams. Do it to change yourself. Okay? That's what I would advise you to do. Any questions before we go on to the next stage? Number 3. Maybe I should leave a space after all these things. Anyone, any questions on the online side? I'm just talking away, rambling away. Anyone, any questions? No? Chenju Yujia, no questions. Zhangqi, no questions. Okay. Change has got lots of problems. So let's discuss that. Remember, we are trying to do this. What do we have to do to consolidate change and to hold on to gains? What are the problems with change management? Especially if it is a long process. Change may not take place immediately. It may be a long process. If it is a long process, the people who started change leave or move on to other careers. People leave in organization. People don't stay on all the time. I made some changes in a subsidiary of a company in a foreign country. I was there for 2 years, and after 2 years, I thought it was enough. Somebody else can take over. I initiated the change, but I thought it's time to pass it on to somebody else. I can't be there forever. You have to manage the change. And these things can happen, right? But the other person must ensure that the change is kept up. If the other person forsakes what was initially devised, then the full change may not take place. And even the people you're trying to make change, they may leave also. And you may get other people. In organizations, that happen all the time. I mean, even in Kaplan, lecturers come and go, right? There was a lecturer here before the class began. I was talking to him. I've never seen him before. He looks like a new lecturer. But he said he's been teaching here for 2 years. Some lecturers I recognize, some lecturers I don't. So once in a while, when I come to Kaplan, I look around to see who I recognize. Nowadays, I don't recognize many people, yeah? Maybe people have moved on. Maybe they've retired. I don't know. And these things can happen anywhere. In other cases, there may be no appropriate or visible rewards. You are going through a change. You may have made certain sacrifices, but then you realize, what's my reward? There's no reward. And people can get disillusioned, all right, over time. And you see it in societies, especially with the older people. When you go to any food court in Singapore, you see all these old Singaporeans. What do? They sit there and they complain all the time, every time. Okay? Why? They feel that they've made so many sacrifices in the development of Singapore, but now they feel that they are left out. But the same thing can happen in companies. When people feel that they are not being taken care of, the worst thing they can do is they can quit. The best thing they can do is they can complain. That's all they do. So these things happen when there are no rewards, no promotions. People will start complaining, right? When people leave a company, turnover results in lost knowledge and experience. Do not think when people leave, it's a good thing for the company. You're losing a lot of experience. When I left my first company, I was working there for 5 years. And I think I've had lots of experience working in different countries, setting up systems. My friends, I told a few of my close friends in the company, I said, I'm going to leave. They said, why are you leaving? What's not good here? I said, look, I'm getting bored. I see the same old thing being applied, more rules and regulations because they were trying to control a lot of us overseas. They want us to submit report every week because they're overseas for 6 months, setting up projects, doing projects. They wanted to control us, and I just didn't like it, and I wanted to leave. But when I left, they've lost 5 years of experience, and that's not good. So do not think when people leave, it's a good thing for the company. You're losing a lot of good experience. You're losing a lot of expertise, knowledge. I say to myself, once in a while, I'll think about it. I say, maybe I'm being a little bit morbid. Eventually, all of us die, right? But I look back at my experience and I say to myself, I've done this, I've done that. What a waste. When you die, you lose all that experience. I was talking about this to a friend of mine. I asked him, I said, we have all this experience. This friend of mine too, he's got all this experience and we are very good friends. I asked him this once. I told him, Kirk, we've done so many things, but when we die, all this experience goes to waste. He said, but Morgan, there's one way to take care of that. And I said, what is that? Tell lots of stories. Tell stories to people about what you've done. Then the experience will stay. And I believe that. That's why you hear me always telling stories, because that's how your experience is shared. Okay, I've done this, good and bad. You share. And that's how the experience. When I meet my daughters, when I meet my wife, when I talk about certain things, I always tell them a story. Yeah, I did that. And they'll remember the story. My daughters especially remember all the stories I've told them since high school. Dad, you did that. Why did you do this? Just explain. And that's how they remember experiences. All right? Selection, induction, and training of new employees need to be considered. So when people leave, and then you have new people coming in, you have to consider all these things. What are you going to train them in? So whenever you have new people, when you join a company, if the company is going through a change, now you have people who resist change, you have these new people coming in, what do you train them on? What do you have to tell them? Do you tell them don't mix around with these people? You won't mix around with other people. What do you do? Okay, so these are all important considerations for a change manager. Okay, you have to explain to people. Do not treat people like kids. That's my advice. Treat them like adults. If you don't tell them anything, they will find out very soon. Might as well be honest. Good and bad things. Be honest with them. What is happening? Usually, well, at least the first few times I went for a job, and I went for a job interview the first 2 times, yeah? When someone advertises for a job and I go for the job interview, I always ask them, is this a new job or am I replacing someone? If I'm replacing someone, I like to know why did the person leave? Is it because of some changes taking place? So be a little bit, you have to think and ask the right questions. It's a valid question, right? Is this a new job that you're creating? My first job, yes. It's a new job we are creating. Okay? My second job was a little bit ambiguous. The answer they gave me was very ambiguous. I asked them, is this a new job or am I replacing someone? And they told me I'm replacing someone. So my question was, why did he leave? And they said, because he doesn't like to travel. I said, I have no objections to that. But I realized later on, that was not the true reason. The reason was something different. And it's because of that, I also left. Okay? The boss liked to top-down approach. So you have to ask the right questions. And people will leave for all types of reasons. So your training becomes important. What do you train people in? Okay? Okay, now we talk about stakeholders. Yeah, stakeholders can be driven by own agenda or block the progress of change. Stakeholders will always try to look at their own selfish interests. Whether you are a customer, supplier, employees, managers, shareholders, all of these are stakeholders. But most of the problems will come from which group? The managers. Not so much the employees, because when a change takes place, managers have their own agenda. They want to stick to their own comfortable environment. They may not like the change. They may have to undertake more responsibility. They may not like it. So they may resist change. They may have their own agenda. So always monitor the stakeholders if you are the change manager. All right. Remember, we spoke about resources. If the change takes too long. Funding may be phased out gradually, or fatigue may set in. Funding means your resources are slowly being depleted. All right, a good case study would be NASA. Do you all follow NASA? You know, NASA, North American Space Agency. To me, it's an interesting organization. I like to observe NASA. What is NASA doing right now? They're doing some interesting stuff, you know. What are they doing? All this moon exploration, space exploration, Mars exploration, they're giving it to the private enterprise. Outsource. Have you all noticed it? That's why Elon Musk, you know, Richard Branson, that guy from Amazon, they're doing all this space exploration. Why do it? NASA can do it if it wants to. But the thing about NASA is they have lost, well, now I think I know what they're doing, but after 1969, they were actually set up to put man on the moon. But after 1969, they were a little bit lost, I thought. But now they seem to be launching telescope, the James Webb telescope. And this is the reason why I borrowed that astrophysics book. I want to learn about the universe. They are looking at how planets become. They're looking at whether there's life form overseas. So they have a new direction. Why? Because their funding has been phased out. So they have to find other ways of staying relevant. So they are changing, but in very interesting ways. Unlike the European Space Agency, they're still top-down directed. But NASA is becoming very different. It's becoming a different kind of animal, which to me is quite interesting as an organization. All right? So if you are trying to make a change, if it takes a long time, you become tired. This is what I mean by fatigue. Yeah? And you see it in most organizations. All right? You find that most organizations, after a while, they may be at the peak of things. After a while, fatigue sets in, and then they go down. Example, IBM. When I was a student, everybody wanted to work in IBM. Where's IBM now?
Yeah.
Maybe 1980s. Everyone wanted to work in IBM. 1990s, everyone wanted to work in Microsoft.
Oh,
2000, everybody wanted to work in, I think, Apple, I think.
yes.
Now, everyone wants to work in Google. No one wants to work in Facebook anymore. Facebook, for the first time, they lost money. So things will go up, it will go down. Do not think in the 1930s, in the 30th decade, now is what, 22? Maybe in the 2030s, there will be other companies. Fatigue will set in when things in the environment changes. We need to be prepared for that. Okay? So if the change takes too long, fatigue sets in. Right? Anyone has any questions before we look at how we can sustain change? So we're now coming to the last part, which is sustaining the change and spreading the change. Anyone, any questions? This is the last part I'm going to talk about, yeah? Maybe another 15, 20 minutes and then we are done. Bauchi is all clear. How about the offline audience? All okay? Sun Haobao is all clear. Okay, now let's look at the next one, which is sustaining. Why am I doing this here? Okay, so let's go to the next one. Sustaining and spreading change. This is the last part. Then we are done. Now, spread of change, we want to sustain and spread it across the organization. Spread is affected by three factors. When would you adopt a change? When someone asks you to change, you look at the method. Okay, let's use a simple example. Let's look at the phone. When someone asks you to change your phone, when will you change your phone?
I want to change it. I will change it.
I know, but when will you change? It's not about you, you know. If someone says, okay, this is your phone, now I'm giving you a new phone, now same price or maybe even cheaper, when will you change to buy the new phone? Immediately. Why? Why would you buy a new phone? Yeah. If it's better than the old method, you will buy it. Same with change. If someone asks you to change, why would you change? If it is better than the old method. So you have to look at the attributes. Attributes of the change in methods and working. Something happened. Give me a minute. Yeah, I think the screen here just died. Okay, let me. Working practices. Just give me a minute. Gotta fix this. Okay, just give me a minute. I'm just trying to shut down and starting again. We got 2 more. Give me a minute. Yeah. Whenever things fail, the first thing I do is I switch off and on.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, that's the easiest way. Sometimes, there are loops. And that's the first thing you do. Okay, so now I'm turning it on. Let's see what happens. If it doesn't turn on, just listen to me. I'll post this. This is coming on. It looks like nothing is happening. Maybe it's this one. Okay, for the online, offline audience, just listen to me. I'll post these notes online. Yeah. Okay. It's all right. Okay. Yeah, the offline audience just lost the screen, but the online audience still has a screen. So I will post the notes maybe tonight or tomorrow. Okay, so we look at the changes in methods and practices. So it has to be better than existing practices. If it is better, you will change. All right? And the other thing is, let's say I give you a phone, and the new phone is entirely different from what you're used to. Maybe it works differently. Maybe you have to go and learn something new. Would you make the change? Yes. No. I want it to be as close as the way I know it. If you give somebody something entirely new, they wouldn't want to try it. So if it's close to, this is the reason why now you know marketing, yeah? When they come up with Apple 1, Apple 2, Apple 3, they just increase it gradually. They're leading to somewhere else until when the technological innovation has reached a stage, then you're familiar with everything, then they'll introduce that new product. Bring you gradually through the change, not immediately to the change. Understand? Okay? So better than existing practices, but compatible with existing practices. It has to be compatible with what you have done. Okay, maybe you can go online and check also. I think that's what they're doing. All right. And then when you are compatible, it becomes easy to understand. People will understand things quite easily. All right. And if you get a new phone, how do you learn to use it? How do you learn to use it? When you buy a new phone, how do you learn to use a new phone?
Use it, just to try.
You know what I do? Anything I don't understand, I'll ask my wife. She said, Morgan, it's easy. Then she'll show me. And that's what most of us do. You check with your friends. So it is, you don't, I do. Yeah, but if you want to learn something nifty stuff, some new stuff, yeah, whatever, yeah, but you're checking with other people. So when it is easily compatible, others have tried it, others would know it. So you will experience and test. Somebody's laughing. Read instruction. Well, instruction doesn't give you everything, Piao Jindan. Okay, experience and test out new methods before committing to change. And this is what a lot of these telephone companies do. When you go there, they have something, latch onto it, you pull it out, and then you try it out. They want you to experience the new feeling, the new effect of this new phone. So this is how they attract you to make the change. And let me ask you this question, or maybe I should ask every one of you. A lot of you like to send messages, right? These people are all sending messages, right?
Yes.
Messages came from SMS. For, how should I put it? For which country were SMSs developed? For which country was SMSs developed? When the phone was first developed, everybody was talking, except in one country. In one country, cannot speak on the train, cannot speak on the bus. Where was it developed? Japan. Japan was the first country to use SMS, But after that, what do? Now you can send SMS in many languages, right? You can send text in many languages. You have to thank Japan for that. Okay? So the change has to be adaptable to local needs. That's what I'm trying to say here. So if you are a multinational corporation, you make changes in one country, it has to be adaptable to other countries. The phone is a good example to tell you how they were able to adapt. I'll tell you another interesting story about phones. Now you don't find it. Maybe now you find it, I don't know. Remember, there was one time people used to hang around the phones around their neck? You all remember that? Nowadays, people don't. They carry it in their bag. But there was a time when people used to hang the phone around their neck. Do you all know? Do you all remember? Do you know where it started? Do you know which country kind of started this hanging around the phone around the neck? Nokia employed an anthropologist. An anthropologist will look at how people use devices, right? And Nokia, this lady, I remember she giving this interview. She said, let me read the messages here. She said she went to India and she saw all the women carrying the phone in their hands. And when she asked them, why are you carrying the handphone? They said, because we don't have any pockets. That's how they came up with that thing, so they hung around the neck. It was her idea. So when you read enough, you will find out about all these things. But I think now people carry it in their bags. Yeah? Maybe in India, people don't wear saris anymore. Maybe they're all wearing pants. Maybe that's why they have pockets. But it started a long time ago. All right? Interesting stories. Yeah, good to know. So adapt to local needs. So this is attributes of the change in the methods and the working practices. Another thing you need to look at, okay, I've only got 3 here. Number 2. So we are now on to number 2. The attributes of the organization. What you have to do is, do the employees have the skills? You have to ask yourself. If the employees do not have the skills that you aspire to have the organization wanting to have, then you have a problem. So when an organization goes through change, you have to ask yourself, do the employees, do they have the skills, or do you need to provide training? And you also have to give assistance after training. Because when you train someone, they will always have lots of questions after you finish the training. And when you apply the training, you must have someone to talk to. So you need to offer all these things, okay? Okay, so you have to have all these things. You got to give access. Like for me, my first company, yeah, I told you, I was there for 5 years, but out of those 5 years, 1 year I was on training. And after the training, they just threw me at different parts of the world. I was doing projects. When I was doing projects, of course, I have lots of problems. I should be able to solve the problems, but there are always some problems I cannot solve. So I must have someone to call to, and I know who to call to ask for help. And they will advise me. They said, okay, look at this, check that, and then I'm okay. They have changed me to be able to work independently, doing projects in different parts of the world, but I may still have problems. So you may have to offer assistance. And this is what it is. The attributes of the organization. You can, let's go to the next one. You also have to offer incentives and sanctions for adopting the change. When people change and they are effective, I think you should reward them. I'm of this belief. When you go through a process of change and people change because you tell them it is beneficial to them, if they achieve it, you should reward them. All right. I think I told you about this employee I had. When she made the change, I rewarded her because she became much more efficient. She became much more, she was much more healthier. And if you're healthy, you can get a lot of things done. So you reward. But then you can also use sanctions. Let's say if someone doesn't want to change, don't punish them, but maybe you can show that because they have not changed, maybe they don't get incentives like people who have changed. So there must be a distinction. It's not like treating everyone equal. People who change according to your change process, they should be rewarded. People who don't change, who are not beneficial to the company, they should not be rewarded. Reward is not a uniform thing across the organization. Okay. Remove obstacles that prevent adoption of new practices. People will always have obstacles when you're learning new things. You must give people time to learn. You're learning something and then you're expected to what? You're taking an exam when? Next month? Is it next month? Or no? Okay. So you have about what? About 1 month to prepare. You can't have an exam almost immediately. You must get people to move in. You must give people time to learn, to adapt to what needs to be done. So when we talk about removing obstacles that prevent adoption of new practices, we got to think in terms of give people time to learn. We're also thinking in terms of respond to concerns and complaints, and so on. Yeah, you never know what kind of problems people have, right? Some people may be too tired to learn, maybe because they're trying to make ends meet or they have families at home, especially working mothers. You have to give them some leeway. I once had a lady, she was a single mom. She had 2 daughters, and her daughters were always babies, yeah? They were always getting sick. She used to work for me, and I used to give her a day off, not official day off. I said, look, go and take care of your kids and then come back, whenever they are taken care of. And she was very loyal to me, okay, because I gave her, but she was willing to listen anytime I kind of like explain certain things. I would like this thing to be done. I was setting up the operations. She listened simply because I took care of her personal needs, right? Taking care of the kids. So we have to be a little bit forgiving, right? Life is not always about just getting things done. Yeah. I mean, you want to get things done, but you need people around you to help you to achieve those things. And you need to take care of their family, their personal needs. So these are the things, attributes of the organization. Last point. This is a very short one, and then we are done. Values of potential users of the change in the organization. We all have values, when you work in an organization or when you are even in a classroom like this. I believe Kaplan students have certain values. I believe so. I think you all want to do your best. You want to improve. That's why you're here. You're learning to, learning to improve. I believe so, and I think so. It's true. So what are the shared beliefs? Shared beliefs about how the entity or the organization relates. Okay. You could be relating to almost anything. Could be customers, could be suppliers, could be the external environment. How do you look at them? How do you see them? Do you see them as partners, especially customers and suppliers? Or I've seen some people, some companies looking at suppliers as very low, and you squeeze them for whatever they are worth. That's not very good, yeah? So these are all values. So how does the company relate to customers, competitors, and other external constituencies? People who are outside of the organization. How do you treat them? Do you treat them with respect, or do you treat them as someone who's different? I've seen some organizations who treat people outside of the organization as inferior, you know. I've seen people like that. Not a good thing to do. All right. You got to treat people as partners, you know, working together. And also, how do individual members in the organization, this is the last one, relate to and work with each other? How do you treat others in the organization, people you work with? Right? So these are things which would help in the spread of the change. You want to sustain the change. All these three factors here. The methods that you use, the change methods, the attributes of the organization, how do employees, do they have the skills? And the last one is your mind, your mindset. Anyone has any questions? Anyone online? Any questions, anyone? Piao Jindan, Bauchi, all okay? All right, I won't keep you. Yeah, those online. I'll just spend some time with the offline group here. So tomorrow we are having a very short session. Is there anything you would like me to discuss apart from the focus areas for the exam? Anyone online? Would you like me to discuss anything besides the focus areas for the exam? Tomorrow, I think, is only 2 hours. So I may take an hour, maybe less, to talk about what I need to talk about. If there's anything you'd like me to talk about, please let me know. All right? Send me an email, or maybe you can even ask me tomorrow and I'll do it. Okay, it's an online session tomorrow for everyone. Okay, so those online, thank you very much. I've saved this. I'll post this maybe tomorrow, maybe after tomorrow's class. Yeah, tonight I don't have time. Maybe tomorrow I'll do it. Okay. All right. See those online session. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow at, what time is it? Yeah, 3:15, right? Tomorrow? Okay, tomorrow I'll see you at 3:15. 3:15. The class is in the afternoon tomorrow. Same time as today. Okay, take care, everyone. All those online, yeah? I'm just going to switch off. And if you have anything, I'll just monitor. No, just choose one, Jason. Just choose one type of intervention. You don't have to use all 4 interventions. Just choose one. See where the cause and effect is, and then whatever is appropriate, just choose one intervention. Is that okay, Jason? Jason heard me. Okay, Jason, just repeat, yeah? Just one. Just choose one. Okay.